Hey everyone, it's Russ, and it is the inaugural and what I hope will be the first of many of my planning in public um, videos. As I introduced in a recent weekly email newsletter, we're going to be focusing on the fictional uh, character Lillian Lifestyle, whose name you can see in the middle of your screen here. And having given this some more thought, rather than subjecting all of you to sitting and watching me type on the screen, I've actually kind of skipped ahead a couple of steps. So I'd like to ask you to imagine that I had already had a exploratory discovery session with Lillian. In that meeting, I typically ask a bunch of questions around these 7 key topics: values, relationships, goals, financials, advisors, process, and interests. And this mind map can actually gets built out into a fairly comprehensive, but at the same time, consolidated view of a person's life, both financial and otherwise. So I'd ask for you to kind of take a leap of faith with me. We've had this conversation, or I should say Lillian and I have had this conversation. And I took the information that Lillian and I discussed in this conversation, and then I went over into my financial planning software, which you can see on the screen now. Again, I don't think anyone wants to sit there and just watch me type. So I went ahead and pre-filled a lot of this information. A lot of this will line up with the highlights I shared in a recent weekly email, a little bit about Lillian and her lifestyle, her financials. And so today, I just wanted to kind of run through the basics, some of the inputs that I've used based on my conversation with Lillian to start building her plan. So to begin with, let's start with people. We've got Lillian. She's 61 years old, so she was born in June of 61. She lives in Georgia. That's important because that will factor into her tax calculations within the software. She has 2 kids, but they're grown, so they're not listed as dependents. But I did include Lucy, her granddaughter, who is about 12 years old, because we want to consider maybe planning for part or all of Lucy's college education. So I'm going to save that. In addition to the people, we also want to look at some account details. So Lillian has a brokerage account. So this is a non-retirement investment account. This is at Schwab. It's worth about $688,000, 253. It has a cost basis of $254,000. She also has a 401k with her employer where she's still employed, and that balance is $166,494. Finally, Lillian has an IRA account also at Schwab. That's worth $791,209. For purposes of the financial planning analysis, and what I'll be sharing with you today and in future videos, we're only really considering the liquid investment assets. So her brokerage account, her 401k, her IRA. She has some other investment assets, but and they're called they're called non-investment assets. So these are everything below this highlighted line is not included in the analysis that we're going to be looking at. So she has a car. She's got a 2015 Lexus that's paid for. She has a Bank of America checking account, a Bank of America savings account. She has a home worth approximately $650,000, and she has a mortgage with a remaining balance of $200,000. So we could build out some additional details in here, but I think for purposes of what I want to do and what I want to be able to share with you in the future, I think this is a good place to start. Again, upon watching this video, if this brings any questions to mind for you, or if there's anything that you would like for me to go into more detail about in the future, please let me know, and I'm happy to do that. Currently, Lillian is employed. She earns $120,000 a year. She's eligible for a 15% bonus, but since a bonus is not guaranteed, we do not include that in her income. As I mentioned, she's born in June of 61. She's 61 years old, and we're assuming a life expectancy of 95. Now, I can pull up this quick mortality table, and let me expand this a little bit, and you'll see that based on Lillian's date of birth and the fact that she's a female, if we assume the 50th percentile, so basically a coin flip odds that she's going to live to a certain age, she would fall between 87, which is 52.481, and 88, which is a little under 50%. So call it somewhere between 87 and 88 years old. However, we don't want to assume the average and run the risk that Lillian were to outlive her money. So instead, we actually go with something closer to the 80th percentile, meaning somewhere, somewhere out here where she's got a 20% chance of living to a certain age. So that puts her around 94, 95, because as you can see here, at 95, she's got about a 19% chance of living to that age. So that's the number we use. Now, once we build the plan, we can always come back and change this number to see the impact of whether or not Lillian were to live a shorter life or a longer life. And that's an important variable to consider, because clearly that's something that none of us can control. We can influence it by our health and diet choices, but we ultimately can't control it. Finally, Lucy is in here. Her date of birth is June of 2010. She's 12 years old. My fee is in here. So based on the amount of assets in Lillian's portfolio, this is the fee that I would charge to do this planning, investment management, tax planning work with her. And then one other thing I'll mention at this point is, as I already touched on, we're assuming an age 95 life expectancy. We're currently assuming an inflation rate of 2.4%, and we're assuming that throughout the plan. Now, that's low relative to what we've seen in recent days and weeks and months with inflation, but we're planning for the long term, and that number is more in line with what we have experienced in the over decades in the past, and I think it's a fair assumption to use going forward. So I don't want to be too long-winded with these videos, so I'm going to stop it here for now. I would invite you to reply with any questions, with any thoughts, if you'd like to see more detail, or if you have any thoughts or commentary about a specific data point or assumption that's being built into this plan, let me know. My goal in doing this is to hopefully educate and enlighten some of you a little bit more about my approach to financial planning. It's certainly not the only approach, and it's certainly not the right approach for everyone, but this is how I go about it. And this is what I want to share with you in this and future planning in public videos. So thanks, and look forward to sharing more with you here soon.